Welcome back to the ENCA Corruption Scorecard as we tackle the role of auditors in curbing financial malfeasance, fraud and corruption, as well as lessons and systemic interventions triggered or not triggered by failures and weaknesses of recent years. Time now for our panel discussion, and I'm joined by my panel, the CEO of Pan-African Capital Holdings, Dr. Iraj Abedian, and the former CEO of the Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors, Bernard Agulhas. Thank you to the both of you for joining me. Let me start with you, Mr. Bernard Agulhas. And you did a lot of work in the wake of that, the scandals that kept. It seemed as if every time you would raise your head, there would be something to just whack you on the head as a profession, in as far as the auditing profession is concerned. Are you satisfied that from Steinhoff to EOH and other scandals that I don't mention, lessons have been learnt and a change of course is starting or is actually in the middle of happening?
Thank you, Thulasizwe, and good afternoon to everybody. I certainly believe that we have learned a lot of lessons from the past 3 years, and we have, at the RBA, while I was there, certainly performed the necessary root cause analysis to find out what went wrong and what we could do to ensure that the same issues don't arise again going forward. I do believe that there is a change happening. Certainly, when I left, I could see that the firms were starting to take more responsibility for what had happened, and that they're also keen to change their own behavior. Because if I can go back to the root causes, and one of the main problems that we identified was really from the perspective of auditors' behavior, not necessarily auditors' technical competence, rather their behavior, which included matters such as their independence, their ethical behavior, the fact that they put commercialism ahead of professionalism. That all comes back to behavior, and ultimately it comes back to the auditor's independence. I also believe that auditors are starting to realize that their main mandate is to protect the public, that they operate in the public interest, that they have to put altruism first and not really put self-interest and commercial interest first. Yeah. So once those behaviors start to change, I think we will certainly see a change in the auditor profession, together with the changes that are being implemented by the IRBA at the moment and that are still coming.
Yeah, and we will spend some time talking about the legislative changes that have since been proposed. But let me throw the same question to Dr. Iraj Abedian. Dr. Abedian, Bernard Agulhas sees some semblance of, a sense of taking responsibility by some of the firms, and he says he is starting to see signs of behavioral change and taking responsibility for what happened. Are you seeing the same from your vantage point?
Absolutely not. If they took responsibility for what they've done wrong, the like of KPMG, Deloitte, PwC, they would have paid back hundreds of millions of rand that they've extracted from the system, and they would come and account for the damages that they've caused to the country's credit rating, to the shareholder loss of value, and many, many others, including the loss of credibility and legitimacy of the audit profession. Apart from personal behavior that Bernard talked about, the real issue is not personal behavior. The real issue is that the audit profession is structured to become abusive and extractive and commercialized. By that I mean audit firms are not any longer providing assurance as their main business. All of them, and this is a recorded one, not just in South Africa, globally, all of them make more money from non-audit services than audit firms, and yet they're using the legislated audit or assurance stronghold or monopoly that they have to extract resources and fees that does not belong to the audit business. So they've become a facade, a kind of capture of a legislated environment, because in the financialized economy, you have to audit. Yeah. If you're a public entity, you have to audit. And they know that. And there are only 4 of them. So they've captured this estate. The state and IRBA and them are all from the same ilk. They do nothing. and they scratch each other's back. Nothing has changed. Nothing. These companies don't even comply with the good codes of corporate governance, meaning they don't have enough independent people on their boards. They are not even incorporated. They are partnerships. It's an absolute chaos.
Bernard Agulhas, what do you say to that? Basically, I think in that response, Dr. Abedian, bringing into the picture the whole issue around the strength of the regulator. And we will talk about the regulatory, the legislative changes that are being introduced. But what is your sense? Is IRBA, for example, if we confine it to the auditing profession, is it stronger now than it was in 2007?
Yes, so let me start off by saying that certainly what we do need in South Africa, as in the UK and other jurisdictions, is structural change to the auditing profession. And I certainly look forward to the Minister of Finance's recommendations or proposals in the budget last year to establish an independent review panel to look into the structure of the profession in the country at the moment. One of the proposals in the UK, for example, and from the Competition Markets Authority has been to split the firms into audit-only firms or split services provided by the firms, because we believe at the RBA that one of the root causes is the fact that the firms are providing other services. Now, these changes do not happen overnight. Even the changes to the Auditing Profession Act, which I'll come back to, are not changes that we will see happen, couldn't have happened in the last 3 to 6 months. These changes take time. And again, it is how a democracy operates. We have to take everybody's comments into account, but we certainly accept and recognize that change has to happen. As I mentioned, if the review panel to be formed by the minister does start looking into the structure in the auditing profession, structure of the firms, the fact that maybe we should also consider having audit-only firms, because when you have firms providing both audit and other services, yes, they do make more money from the other services, but at the moment that is allowed. The principle here is that an audit firm cannot serve two masters. When they perform audit services, they perform in the public interest. They are responsible and accountable to the public. When they perform other services like consulting, they are accountable to the management of the organization. They cannot serve two masters. There will be conflict.
So on that note, let me just jump in, Bernard, and ask Dr. Abedian to paint a picture for me of what Bernard Agulhas is talking about, that issue of doing more than just auditing and making more money from other services such as consulting. What, for the untrained mind, what is the effect of that? What does it do? What are some of the examples that you can point out where the mandate that comes with being a consultant for a company sought to override the mandate to actually primarily audit the books of this particular company?
I mean, a good example to this is, which is in the public arena, is KPMG advising or auditing the books, so-called, of the various companies of the Guptas, at the same time advising them how to bypass tax and take their money to Dubai, because KPMG's consulting advisory fees, they originate business for each other, advise them how to bypass taxes, how to cover up various things. That's on the advisory side. It's not the assurance side. And they keep saying to themselves, nobody believes them, but the audit companies tell themselves they have a Chinese wall amongst themselves. That's an absolute nonsense. There is no wall, Chinese or Indian or Mexican. It's collapsed and it's all commercialized. That's a good example. So they end up making more money by advising the client how to bypass taxes, how to go cross jurisdictions. Remember, different jurisdictions such as Dubai, Mexico, US, and South Africa, they've got different rules. Yeah. And these audit firms, they have branches in different places. So they advise each other how to structure all kinds of tax, trust, et cetera, et cetera,
I suppose the work that Deloitte was doing for ESCOM would possibly fall into that category as well.
Absolutely, Thulas. I mean, they do that, and if you look at Deloitte makes, I think, 3.5 times money globally from their non-audit services than audit services.
All right.
And this is on the website. So it's not as if I'm accusing them. These are facts.
All right.
And to Bernard's point that these things don't happen overnight, how many more 100 billions of workers' pension funds should be destroyed before somebody does something?
All right, let's pause there for a moment, Dr. Iraj Abedian and Bernard Agulhas. We will continue this conversation in just a moment. You are watching the ENCA Corruption Scorecard. We are talking about the state of the auditing profession as well as its contribution in the battle against corruption.